Celebrate good times. Come on.
Oh, good Lord.
Welcome to the wicked edition of Second City Sports Zoom style.
Most people listening to this or watching this will not know what Sid just sang just now. Zoom style, Cool in the Gang celebration, top hit from like the early 80s or something. Go ahead, Sid.
Along with Lakeena McGee, which is she, I am Sidney Brown. Hello, it's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can follow this podcast, Second City Sports, right here on YouTube at WARR Media. Our episodes will drop every Monday and Friday right here on YouTube at WARR Media. Once again, at WARR Media. Our podcast schedule is still the same on Tuesdays and Saturdays at WARR on Anchor. Once again, every Tuesday and every Saturday at WARR on Anchor, which keeps you over to Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and the iHeartRadio app. Type in the search engine box on all podcast platforms. WARR on Anchor, and you can go to our website, weareregalradio.com, and you can follow us on all social media accounts as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at WARR Media. Once again, at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
Remember our motto, we are unapologetically fun, and we're going to have some fun today. We welcome back friend of the show. He's the Chicago Bears beat writer for the Chicago Sun-Times, and he's the co-host of the hottest podcast next to ours. It's the Sports Adjacent. That's with co-host Russell Dorsey and producer Tony Gill, which we'll get into later. He is the one, the only, Mr. Jason Leisure. Jason, welcome back to the show, my friend. How are you?
I'm glad to be back. Thank you so much. This was so fun last time I did it. I was very excited when you guys reached out and invited me back.
Yeah, we're glad
Perfect
to have
timing.
you back. We're going to
Timing.
have some fun. Yep. Exactly.
You guys really got a little bit lucky here, because I'm sure you were planning to have me on just to talk about some nondescript offensive lineman or cornerback that they drafted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the first time I can remember a Bears draft being exciting and interesting and surprising to everybody.
We'll tell everyone about it, because what was it like when you got some of the tweets and the messages that you got from last night when the Bears and Giants were swapping picks?
I mean, early in the day, I think hours before the draft in the afternoon, if you just scanned through Twitter, you saw people preparing for the worst, preparing for either a terrible idea, a terrible overpay for a trade to get a quarterback. And people do not have a lot of confidence in Ryan Pace picking a quarterback, or just a very boring need-based draft pick, which I think would have been fine. I mean, sometimes you need an offensive tackle, and the Bears still need an offensive tackle. As excited as everyone is about Justin Fields, that's a really important need they need to fill on day 2 going into next season. And then everything starts to break their way as far as the draft is concerned. I mean, this is the guy they wanted, and he probably, in my opinion, should have been the number 2 quarterback taken, and he slips to 4th among the quarterbacks, and they're sitting there with a very doable trade. It's expensive to trade away next year's first-round pick, especially if they end up being bad in 2021, which is very possible still. That could be a very high pick, and it's going to hurt to lose that. But this made all the sense in the world to me. This was so much smarter and so much clearer of a move than when they traded up for Trubisky 4 years ago. And I think what you saw was Chicago is just excited and thrilled by something the Bears did. And I can't remember the last time it's been since 2018. It's been 2 to 3 years since people were really excited about something the Bears did. And it's been a long time since something Ryan Pace did has been celebrated like this.
Yeah, it depending on who you read and who you talk to and who you listen to over the last 24 hours or so since the pick was made on Thursday night. Some people said that this was head coach Matt Nagy's call, while others said it was GM Ryan Pace's call. What is your take on that? Who will get the ultimate credit for drafting Mr. Fields?
Well, I think it's Pace. I think Pace gets the credit, and with a lot of input, obviously, from Nagy. And Ryan Pace talked a little bit about that Thursday night after the pick, comparing it to and saying that he drew off of Matt Nagy's experience with the Chiefs when they drafted Patrick Mahomes, when they fell in love with all of these traits and qualities where they saw this guy is the future and traded up to get him. It's going to be on Matt Nagy to develop Justin Fields. I think Pace has done his job in the sense of getting a guy who everybody thinks will be really good. This is not a shot. This is not as much of a gamble or a situation where Ryan Pace thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, like with 2017. This is a guy that everybody can see. This guy dominated college football like no one else other than Trevor Lawrence, and beat Trevor Lawrence along the way. And I think took him down to the final 2 minutes the year before. I mean, this is a guy who projects really, really well in every way. And the thing I'd be concerned about now with Matt Nagy is I don't think he's ever coached a quarterback quite like this. And you can't say, here are all the reasons we fell in love with Justin Fields, including that he runs a 4.4 in the 40-yard dash.
Yeah.
And now we're going to beat into his head every day. You win from the pocket. You win from the pocket like they did with Mitch Trubisky. You can't take this guy because of all these great traits and then try to make him into something else. You've got to roll with what he is. A lot like they're not the same player at all. I think Justin Fields has the potential to be better, but a lot like Baltimore did with Lamar Jackson. They didn't bring in Lamar Jackson and say, hey, you need to become a pocket passer, and all this stuff that made you great until this point, we're going to throw that out the window. So the Bears need to develop this guy. They need to hone his passing ability. They need to teach him and bring him along, but don't change the guy, please. Let this guy play the way that he played at Ohio State that everybody fell in love with.
Now, there was a tweet that came up from last month, that had Andy Dalton, QB1, the Bears put out on Twitter. Now, that came back last night, Thursday night, because of course, with the Bears drafting Justin Fields. And of course, Pace reiterated on Thursday night that, Andy Dalton's our starter. He's QB1, blah, blah, blah. But do you think that Fields has a shot to perhaps win the starting job, rookie year?
I think he's going to get the opportunity. And I think if he blows them away, they'd be crazy not to. You're going to stick with Andy Dalton just because you told Andy Dalton you would, or just because you put out a tweet in March. I mean, if this guy blows them away, he's going to start. I cannot imagine that with their jobs on the line, Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy would play the lesser of two quarterbacks. That being said, as excited as everyone is about Justin Fields, it would be highly unlikely, and I know Andy Dalton is not a Hall of Famer or anything like that, it would be highly unlikely that he would be ahead of Andy Dalton by the time the season starts. It'd be highly unlikely for any rookie in that case to be ready ahead of an 11-year veteran or whatever Andy Dalton is. That doesn't happen very much, even with the very best guys. In a perfect world, if you had a quarterback you could play for another year, and you don't know if you have that in Andy Dalton, you really don't, then a best case scenario would be to bring Fields along for a year and get him ready to take over in 2022. You saw a little bit of Miami doing that this past season with Tua, and that where he did come in eventually and he did take over. And that was at a time when Ryan Fitzpatrick was playing pretty well overall.
Yeah.
This is going to be a case more, I think, of Andy Dalton's going to go into the season with the job, and if he plays his way out of that job, he's not going to be QB1 anymore.
Jason Leisure, the Chicago Bears beat writer for the Chicago Sun-Times, is joining us on the weekend edition of Second City Sports, along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown, as we discuss the Chicago Bears' first-round draft pick of quarterback Justin Fields out of Ohio State. Jason, I had a couple of instant thoughts that came to my head after the draft pick on Thursday night, and one of them was wide receiver Allen Robinson. Of course, when we had you on the last time back in January, I said at that time, and of course our audience knows that I said this throughout last season, that Allen Robinson was going to stay here due to the franchise tag. Now that's happened. Now it looks like Justin Fields is going to be the future QB of this team. What if you have to give a percentage of Allen Robinson's signing a long-term contract with the Bears? What would that percentage be?
The likelihood of it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think they should. I think it should be 100%, but I thought that probably for the last year plus, and it didn't happen. Allen Robinson is 26, 27. I mean, he's just in the prime of his career. And a big part of drafting a rookie quarterback is putting pieces around him. And so right now, you look at where the Bears are, and they don't really have an offensive line to protect him if he was to play this coming season. That's scary. And if they don't have Allen Robinson, then what weapons are they really giving this guy? Anthony Miller's probably on his way out. You're going to draft a rookie receiver who hopefully will be ready to go right away. But Darnell Mooney is a really good, promising receiver, but I don't think anybody thinks he's going to be a number one. Cole Kmet, the tight end, is still to be determined. We'll see. The tight ends usually need a year before you start to see them catch on and become weapons in the passing game. So you don't really know what you have around him. The one thing you would know for sure, the one thing you say, we can count on this, is Allen Robinson. And just an exemplary football player in every possible way, the right kind of teammate, the right kind of player, talent, work ethic, everything about this guy is what you want. And the Bears, I think their argument for not paying him what he wants to be paid is that they maybe don't see eye to eye. I know they don't see eye to eye on his production. Allen Robinson views himself as a legitimate number one, top five-ish receiver in the league. And they're looking at his stats and saying, well, not really. You're more like about the 10th best receiver in the league. I would probably argue, and Allen Robinson, I'm sure, would agree with this, that he's put up those numbers with who? With what quarterbacks, man? With Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles and Chase Daniel. And
right.
I think you get bonus points if you do it with them. And I think that if he is playing with a more dynamic quarterback, a more talented quarterback, and Andy Dalton is probably better than those other guys. Andy Dalton it's not really, a big thrill to sign Andy Dalton, who the Bengals spent 10 years trying to decide if he was good or not, and decided that ultimately he wasn't. And then he was a backup for Dallas last year. He's at that stage of his career, but he's still better than Mitch Trubisky, probably. And he's definitely better than Nick Foles. So that gives Allen Robinson a chance to be a little bit better this year and begin working on what could be a really dynamic threat with Justin Fields. So the Bears should want to keep that together. And as far as whether Allen Robinson would want to play here, I would imagine he's more excited about it after they've drafted Justin Fields than before. But it's got to come down to money for Allen Robinson. He wants to be paid. And it's not – I try to explain this to people all the time. It's not like Allen Robinson needs the money to pay his mortgage or something like that. It's not really about the money, even though it is about the money. It's about the respect. It's about this team. Stop saying all the time how great I am and how much you love me, and pay me the way that other teams pay guys that they actually love. That's how you show respect for a player in football.
Show me the money. I'm sure that's what Robinson would want to say. Let's switch gears here and talk about the defense for a second, Jason. They're going to be a year older. A lot of those guys are either near 30 or over 30. Yeah. Fuller's gone. So where do you think this defense, I know it's a little early, to be thinking about this, but do you think the defense could probably be kind of where we thought the defense would be in recent years?
I don't know. I think that this defense in 2020 was still good. It's way too far to say that the defense fell apart or something like that. It's still a good defense, but it's not that great defense that it was in 2018 or even 2019. It was still a Super Bowl level defense. This is where it hurts you trading away all these picks. It doesn't hurt at the time. If I tell you, hey, Sid, you can trade 2 future first round picks. You have no idea what picks these will be, or like in what order. You have no idea who you'll get or whether that guy even becomes good. You could trade those away right now and get Khalil Mack. You're like, yes, let's do it. Mm-hmm. I don't care about those picks. Mm-hmm. And then even when those drafts come up, you have a draft where the Bears in 2019, their first pick is 73rd overall when they chose David Montgomery in the 3rd round. Even that you can kind of live with. When it starts to hurt that you traded away those picks is a couple of years later when you don't have anybody coming up. You don't have anybody except Roquan Smith that's developing into a star in their prime. And so you haven't replenished. You got to replenish every position years in advance. And they haven't been doing that on defense. And you saw a defense last year that was getting old, getting thin on depth. And what did they do since then? They lost Kyle Fuller. That's about it. I mean, there's no real improvements on the defense. You're banking on a lot of shaky bets. You're betting on Akeem Hicks still being able to dominate like he has going into, I think this is year 10 for him. You're betting on Desmond Trufant being able to be a viable corner. You don't have a third corner right now. You're betting on Robert Quinn just somehow turning things around after last year. He was a disaster. That was a disastrous signing last year. And you're just betting now that there's another guy that's in his 9th or 10th year. That's not usually a time when things turn around for a lot of athletes. There's a lot of question marks there. So you're no longer in the position where the Bears have been of, oh, if we could only just figure out this offense and get this offense scoring even 20 points a game, we'll be fine because that defense is great. That defense is still good, but right now I feel like going into 2021, that defense in some ways is hanging on for dear life.
Chicago Bears beat writer Jason Leisure from the Chicago Sun-Times is joining us on the weekend edition of Second City Sports, along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sidney Brown. Jason, you brought up the name of Akeem Hicks just a couple of seconds ago. I wanted to go in this direction. As of this broadcast, the Bears are roughly $400,000 or so under the salary cap technically. Yeah. I know Akeem Hicks's name has been brought up as still potential one of the players getting cut. Jimmy Graham, I know some people brought him up in the beginning of the offseason. I believe he's still here. Charles Leno Jr., he was given a contract extension a couple years ago. Technically, he's still here. What do you think happens in the next coming, obviously after the draft, but what do you think happens in the couple of days and weeks ahead before training camp in July? Do all three of those players remain here, or do we see a surprising trade this coming weekend in the draft? We can move some of those high-priced players.
I think all those guys are staying at this point. Okay. I think Hicks, Graham, Leno, all those guys are in the plan now for 2021. If they didn't move them by now, they're not going to. I was wondering if Jimmy Graham was going to retire, and he clearly isn't. They're figuring on having him this season again. $400,000 under the salary cap. To put that in perspective of how narrow their margin is, that's not enough to sign your rookie class. So they right now can't sign Justin Fields and whoever else they end up drafting this weekend, because you need at least a little bit to sign those guys, even though rookie contracts aren't that big. So something else has to happen. If you move Anthony Miller, he doesn't make a lot. I can't remember his exact cap number for 2021, but it's maybe a couple million. That would help. And I think that's something they want to do anyway, even if it's only for a 5th or 6th round pick. I think they're done with him. And then maybe a restructuring or an extension for somebody. The Bears have been doing that a lot. They don't necessarily need to do a big one to make enough room to sign their rookies, but that's what I think will happen. This is so, when you asked about, what they might be doing cap wise, it's not going to be anything exciting. It's not going to be anything interesting, which is a good thing in this case. It's not going to be anything horribly upsetting either. Like, losing an all pro level corner in Kyle Fuller. It's just going to be some accounting type things, or maybe moving Anthony Miller, something like that.
Could be interesting to see what they do. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Aaron Rodgers, all types of rumors are coming out. He wants to stay, he doesn't, and then all this other stuff. So what's your prediction? What do you think Aaron Rodgers, or where does he go? Does he stay in Green Bay? Does he go to San? Well, he don't need to go to San for now, but does he go to like maybe Vegas or Denver? Seems to be the hot rumor right now. What's your synopsis in this?
Well, they're not getting rid of him. There's no way. I mean, you wouldn't trade Aaron Rodgers, would you? For anything. What if the offer yesterday, Lakeena, was that the 49ers were offering the number 3 pick and maybe one other first in the future for Rodgers? Would you take that deal if you're Green Bay? Would you take that for the reigning MVP?
No way. No way. No way.
They were right there. They were in the NFC title game last year, and they've got I think the best quarterback that we've ever seen in football. I think he's the greatest quarterback of all time. I don't think anybody has brought what he has brought, and that's going to change eventually. With Mahomes will take that spot by the end of his career, but for now, Rodgers is the best, and I would not let him go, and I don't think Green Bay would let him go. the thing that makes it really interesting to me is that he's an unusual guy. He's got a lot of interests beyond football. He has made $250 million in his career in football salary. It wouldn't be the craziest thing for Aaron Rodgers to say, fine, I just don't want to play. I mean, he's done everything. He's won MVPs. He's made the money. He's won the Super Bowl. He has all these other things he could pursue. He could go be the host of Jeopardy. I think that's a pretty high-paying job. Maybe not what he would make in football. Maybe not $40 million a year, but who knows? He's the guy who would do it. If any star was going to walk away just because they wanted to and they just didn't want to play for their team and and the team wasn't going to trade him, I feel like Aaron Rodgers would do it.
Going back to the Bears quarterback situation, Jason, now that Justin Fields was selected on Thursday, most NFL teams don't keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster anymore. What do you think will happen? What do you think happens to Nick Foles at this point? Do you think it just get flat out cut, or do you think the Bears will try to trade him for a 6 or 7 round pick this weekend during the draft?
I think what's going to happen for Nick Foles is he's going to spend the next 2 years cashing checks. And good for him, but that's not good for the Bears. This was a disaster deal from the beginning. This is not revisionist history from me. I don't know how other people felt about this, but I thought this was a terrible idea from the beginning. When you're so bad off at quarterback that your plan is, let's take a guy the Jaguars are thrilled to rid themselves of. Let's do that. And while we're at it, let's pay a lot for it. Let's give up a 4th round pick and give him guaranteed money for 3 years. Well, what are you doing? And this is not some mistake that Ryan Pace made at the beginning of his career. This was a year ago, Sid.
Yeah.
I mean, This was a disaster. This was a guy who I know that people love Nick Foles' story. I love Nick Foles' story. It's a cool story. It's one of the coolest stories I can think of in the history of sports, where this guy who is basically a lifelong journeyman and backup comes in at just the right time and gets hot, incredibly hot, and leads the Eagles to the championship. That is as cool a story as you're going to find in sports. It doesn't mean that he's a good quarterback. It doesn't mean that he's really been a good quarterback over the past decade. He's bounced around to all these teams for a reason. And now Jacksonville, I thought, and a lot of other people thought, they were suckers for falling for that and saying, Nick Foles, this is his time. Let's give him an $80 million contract. And Jacksonville realized in a couple of months that they were wrong. And everybody thought the Jaguars were going to have to give up something to get rid of him. You know what I mean? Like they do in the NBA. Staple a 2nd round pick to him to get someone to take him. And instead, the Bears are offering a 4th round pick. And then the Bears commit themselves to this guy when he can't play. He had that great game against the Falcons when he came in last year and then was a disaster after that. I mean, how bad do you have to be that they will admit their mistake and go back to Mitch Trubisky late in the season with the playoff hopes on the line? And I don't think they can trade him because I don't think the rest of the league will fall for that. I don't think anybody would give up even a 6th or 7th round pick to bring on that contract. And the Bears are on the hook for that contract, not just this year, but next year too. So I think they're going to carry 3 quarterbacks, and Nick Foles is going to be there in kind of that Chase Daniel, really expensive, extra quarterback coach type role.
Yeah, probably more of a mentor to Justin Fields, no doubt. So let's talk about the whole first round for a second there, gentlemen. Jason, who were your, outside the Bears, of course, picking Fields, who were your sort of surprises, steals? You're like, wait, that guy sort of a reach at that number. What was sort of your breakdown from the Thursday night's first round?
I just thought it was interesting where the quarterbacks landed. I thought it was interesting that regardless of who took Justin Fields, back in February, everybody believed or even in March, I think, everyone believed that Justin Fields was the best quarterback other than Trevor Lawrence. And those guys were going to go 1 and 2. And that's what everyone thought after watching all of Justin Fields' tape at Ohio State. And then through this process of nitpicking and overthinking in some cases, he slides to 4th or even 5th, depending on who you talk to going into the draft. And Trey Lance moves ahead. I think Trey Lance played 1 game last year, and he's playing at North Dakota State. That's hard to predict how that's going to work in the NFL, to compare that to NFL play, as opposed to comparing quarterbacks from Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, and even BYU is a little more of a comp, but that one's going to be tougher to say whether Zach Wilson is going to be able to play at the NFL level. So seeing where those guys went, seeing which teams felt they needed a quarterback, which teams felt they didn't need a quarterback. I mean, couldn't the Giants use Justin Fields, and they traded away the pick to the Bears to take him? You saw Denver pass on a quarterback. A lot of teams that Detroit, Minnesota, teams that didn't seem to me like they have a long-term answer at quarterback didn't take one. And then New England does, and it's always scary whatever New England does. Anything they do, you always think like, man, he probably knows something. And I wonder how Mac Jones is going to turn out, getting a really good opportunity there. Sometimes really more talented quarterbacks end up in bad spots and they never develop because of that. And less talented quarterbacks land in perfect spots. And that's why they become really good, because they are brought along expertly. And that's the situation the Bears are in right now. You know, you wonder if the Bears had gotten Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes 4 years ago, would they have ruined him? And if Trubisky had ended up in Kansas City, would they have made something out of him? You always wonder that with quarterbacks. And that's going to really be something to watch this year. Do these guys, these 5 guys that everyone thinks are really good, who's really the best of them talent-wise, and who is really going to benefit from being in the right spot? Mac Jones probably is the 5th best out of those 5, but I wonder what his career is going to be, because he landed in with such a great organization. If anyone's going to maximize him, it would be them.
I think for me, Lakeena, as I said in our last episode, I thought the Atlanta Falcons would draft Justin Fields. Of course, they go with the tight end Kyle Pitts out of Pittsburgh. So out of Florida, I should say. Sorry.
Yeah.
He goes to Atlanta. I said if the Falcons would have drafted Justin Fields, the draft would have been all messed up. But I think, to your point, Jason, about Bill Belichick, or as we call him on this show, Bill Belichick, I thought, Justin Fields.
You wouldn't mind if he was cheating for your team, Sid. You wouldn't mind if he was over there on the
not.
Bears sideline doing all that. You'd take every bit of that cheating.
Exactly.
You'd be the fall. You'd offer to be the fall guy. You're like, I'll play those footballs. No problem, man. I'll plant those cameras. No problem.
Exactly.
But
thank you.
It's the teams that you just mentioned, Jason, that passed up on Justin Fields, like Carolina. Of course, now they have Sam Darnold in Denver. Now they have Teddy Bridgewater. I think Bill Belichick would have taken Justin Fields, and the Bears to move up to get Fields. But it was a good pick for New England to get Mac Jones. Like you said, he knows something that most people don't know. And I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's going to be the next time Brady, but I wouldn't be surprised if Mac Jones stays there in New England. He has a good, solid career there.
That will hurt if that happens. If he outperforms, that will hurt the Bears. That will hurt Ryan Pace. That'll sting a little bit for Chicago if he ends up outperforming Justin Fields, because that was their choice. Once they moved up, the guys that were left were Fields or Jones. They could have chosen out of those two, and I would have chosen Fields for sure. I would have chosen Fields. I would have taken him out over anybody except Lawrence. So I think that will work out, but that's going to be interesting to watch. Those will be the 2 guys you compare going forward now if you're in Chicago.
Oh, definitely. I think for me, Sewell, I thought that the Bengals were going to get him, but, they went with, Joe Burrow's former teammate at LSU, Jamar Chase, which, was a good pick, but, the Bengals need line help, and maybe they'll do that later on, as the draft goes. And look, I think Najee Harris, the Steelers got their guy at 24, and also too, he hosted a draft party for some kids at a shelter that he lived in. If you guys know his story, he lived at a shelter for many years before he ended up, being adopted and ended up going to Alabama, of course, doing some great things there. And I think that's it. I mean, pretty much everybody kind of went where you expect. I mean, look, Northwestern had 2 first-rounders for the first time ever. So you got to give props to Coach Fitzgerald and what he's done. I mean, Greg Newsome Jr., he ends up going to Cleveland. And look, I think that if you're – and Slater now he's going to be protecting Herbert's blind side over at with the Chargers. So I would say, look, Northwestern getting 2 first-round picks. I mean, that's great. And look, nothing was really like, oh my God, they reached for this guy. So I think that it kind of went what you expected. Maybe the names, the order was probably a little bit different, but I think pretty much everybody everybody kind of went where they were supposed to, and it kind of went according to script for the most part.
Jason Leisure of the Chicago Sun-Times Bears beat writer is joining us on the weekend edition of Second City Sports, along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown as we head down the home stretch of this conversation. Jason, let's switch it up now and talk about your podcast, The Sports Adjacent, part of the House of L Network. That's from Lawrence Holmes, midday host of 670 The Score, WSCR in Chicago. It stars yourself, along with another good friend of this program, Russ Dorsey, Cubs beat writer of the Chicago Sun-Times, and Tony Gill, your executive producer. I'll share a little story. I worked with him as we were working with the Dean Davis show a few years ago. He is a great young man. He's a great talent. And so he's an up and rising star in this business. People, if you haven't paid attention, you better pay attention to him now. I really mean that. But working with him, I saw the beginnings of Mr. Gill. Yes, he has some outrageous hot takes. I know he tries to stir the pot a little bit. I kind of do that too, but Tony Gill, he steps out there just a little bit more further than I do.
Just a little, right? Just a little.
You guys, let me say this in all due respect, and we're having fun with this. You guys are getting the full boat, and then so we're working with Mr. Gill. So talk to us about how that project came about.
It's ridiculous how much. I mean, this was a project that Russ and I have had in the works for 6 months at least before it debuted, and we've spent so much time and so much effort on this, and now 2 months into it actually being a thing, all anybody ever wants to ask us about, both of us, is Tony. I can't believe Tony said this. Why did Tony say that? Does Tony really think this? What's it like having to deal with Tony all the time? And Tony is one of my closest friends and has been for most of the time I've lived here. And it's what he is on our show is what he is in real life. I mean, this is it's not an act. It's not a character that he's playing. He is a little bit out there. And as a friend, it's been one of my favorite things about him. As someone trying to put on a podcast, it can be absolutely maddening.
Wow. Yeah. How do I top that? So, you guys I listened to the podcast. It's a great podcast. You guys should definitely check it out. You guys don't just do sports, you do like pop culture. And the last thing you guys did was about food and such. So, what makes this podcast different from like some of the other podcasts that's out right now? Because there's so many, including ours, but what makes you guys different?
I think it's barely a sports podcast. And that's the kind of thing I like to listen to. I don't want to listen to people debate middle relievers and, hypothetical trades and things like that. I would much rather talk about some of the more interesting things around sports. We've veered off of that quite a bit lately. But I enjoy talking about some of the little Twitter controversies and sideshow stuff that happens around sports. And as far as Russ, I mean, both of us have other platforms. Both of us do a lot of different things media-wise, but neither of us has a platform or an outlet to really just let loose and talk about whatever we want. And when there's some interesting controversy that happens in the NBA, for example, which is like every day, which is my favorite thing about it. Neither of us has any Marquee Network and the Sun-Times and all in the Score. They're not calling and asking us about any of that. We got to do our jobs for those places. This is an outlet for us to talk about whatever we want. And him and I have, for a while, Russ and I have had we just have these great, entertaining, interesting, sometimes deep conversations in our friendship, and it translates really, really well to doing that on the podcast, I think. And usually I feel like if we're having fun and we're laughing, then probably the listeners are too. And that's going to be what most of the show is. If you listen to it, we're 8 episodes in right now. You can find it on iTunes, Sports Adjacent. You can please listen and subscribe. We'd appreciate it because we're trying to get this thing off the ground still. But both of us have a lot of other interests and a lot of really serious thoughts about society and culture and the way a lot of different things are going in our country right now, and about other things like sports media that people might be interested in. So, while 75% of it is going to be nonsense, the other, we might hit you every now and then with some deeper, more interesting topics, some things that actually matter.
Last moment or two with Jason Leisure of the Chicago Sun-Times. He's the Bears beat writer right here on Second City Sports Weekend Edition, along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sidney Brown. Before I ask my last question, Jason, I wanted to piggyback off your point about different topics. I like you guys have a good balance. It's not all sports, obviously. It's a little to do with sports. It's everything but sports. If you steal that title, please give me the credit. But but I like some of the topics, like how you spend your semi money, your sibling checks. Of course, Tony never been to a library. He did put it on Twitter, so he's crossed that off his list. And also,
I
dug into his dating life. So I like the variety of those topics.
Good. I'm glad you like it, man. Thank you. I don't want to do just another cookie cutter sports debate show. That's not what any of us want to do. And I'm very fortunate to be in business with really interesting people. Both of those guys, Russ is a really interesting person with a lot of great stories in his background and having a lot of interesting experiences now. Having a great job covering the Cubs for the Sun-Times and traveling around the country doing that. And like I said, Tony is probably one of the most free-thinking, out there friends that I have. So both of these guys make it really easy to do a great, interesting show.
It really is. I love your rapport between the three of you. It's just amazing. And like I said, that last one you guys did with breakfast foods, I thought it was just hilarious. And I just
thank you.
I was like, oh, good. And and what like Sid said with Tony saying he had not been to the library until you took him. I'm like, oh good Lord. Okay.
That was appalling. That's so disappointing.
Come on, really, come on, Tony. But last question for me. Mayor Lightfoot announced earlier this week that that the Bulls and the Blackhawks will be able to have fans, 25%. Do you think that the Bears will be at full capacity by the time their season starts? Sid and I kind of have this bet where, I said full capacity by the fall, by like mid-September, right before the NFL season starts. Sid, I think you said late summer, for the Cubs and
around the baseball All-Star break, not late July, early August. Yeah.
So you're the tiebreaker, Jason. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't have a medical degree and I'm not an infectious disease expert. And I think that's what you really need to be to answer that question, not just a sports writer. But if I had to guess, I would guess that yes, outdoor NFL stadiums will be able to go to full capacity. I would think so. I mean, the new guidance from the CDC is that it doesn't really transmit very much outdoors, so that helps. But one of the things that the NFL does that they've done throughout the pandemic that's been smart is they haven't been making decisions until they've had to. So they didn't make a decision on the 2020 season and training camp and things like that until summer. They don't do it. They're not going to say now, let's have full stadiums or let's commit to 50% capacity. They're not going to do that now. They're going to wait and see how things are at. See what the vaccination rates are, see what the positivity rates are. I mean, who knows? I think you could say this at any time, but really in the last year, you can sit here and say it and mean it. Who knows what things are going to look like 4 months from now? I mean, which of the three of us has any idea what the country's going to be like, what Chicago is going to be like, what just general society as far as being in crowds and guidance and restrictions and social distancing is going to be like 4 months from now? That is so far away that a lot of things could change. And that's why the NFL isn't making these concrete declarative statements about what they're going to do.
Last question from me, Jason. We'll end it on a fun one. Of course, Versus is an entertainment company that have been having these battles between music artists from the R&B and hip hop world for the last year or so. You had Snoop Dogg and the now late DMX, who just passed. So you had Brandy and Monica. You had the old school group, the Isley Brothers, and Chicago's very own Earth, Wind, and Fire, which was great. I enjoyed it. Steve Harvey, I love you, but you're not the whole show. Please sit down. But with that being said, I want to ask you, Jason, dead or alive, what two music artists, or it could be an artist and or a group, dead or alive, that you will put up against a battle and you will watch? What would those music groups be and why?
Man, I got to pick two that See, this is what I wouldn't be good at, is who would battle. Do they have to be in the same genre? Because I think it'd be
No.
interesting to watch.
They don't have to be.
No,
Yeah,
no,
It'd
not
be
at
interesting
all.
to
you can
watch
mix it up.
It'd be interesting to watch people that were of different genres. I would want to see Jay-Z and Otis Redding.
Ooh. Okay.
Shake things up. We like it. We like
Yeah.
it.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, they got, JC's got a whole library, and Redding, even though his sadly career was cut short and life
Right.
was cut
Mhm.
short, I think
Yeah.
he's got a pretty good library of music. I would love that. That'd be
And
cool.
I'm a big fan of both of those guys, and I kind of thought of it because Jay-Z and Kanye West sampled one of Otis Redding's songs on Watch the Throne, so maybe they'd have an appreciation, and I think that'd be interesting. I'd watch that.
Yeah, also Kanye sampled Shaka Khan a lot, especially during his first
did.
two albums.
Yes,
Chicago's
he-
very young,
Yes,
but
he did.
that's a whole nother issue. That was Jason Leisure of the Chicago Sun-Times, Chicago Bears beat writer, and of the Sports Adjacent podcast with Russell Dorsey and Tony Gill. Where can everybody find you on social media?
You can follow me at Jason Leisure on Twitter. That's pretty much it. And you just got to make sure you spell my name right on there. It's Lieser.
All right. Thank you very
Thanks,
much
Jason. This was so
Yeah,
much
thank
fun.
you very much for coming on our program today. Great job. You keep up the great work, young man.
Yay.
We'll definitely have you back, hopefully before training camp or before the season starts. So keep up the great work with the Sun-Times and with the podcast, and we'll have you back on again soon.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks. You stay right there.
Yeah.
All right, that was Jason Leeser. Also, too, you can follow the @Sport Adjacent podcast @sports_adjacent on Twitter. So make sure you guys check that out. Lots of great episodes, 8 episodes, and you'll love every minute of it. We promise.
Yes. And also what we try to do on this show, Lakeena, I know it's a different platform. We mostly talk about sports, but we mix things up here and there. And that's what I like. And that's what we try to do. Those guys do it a little bit more with that platform over there on the House of L. Subscribe to that podcast as well. I know you guys do it for us here. Do it over there as well. Support our friends of the show, and you'll be better off for it. I promise you.
All right, Sid. So we got a couple of minutes left, Sid. As far as like the rest of the first round of the draft, as far as the Bears win, I think it was a little after 8:00 our time where we got word that the Bears were going to trade with the Giants and swap picks to swap those picks, so that the Bears were able to get at 11, and of course the Giants ended up going at 20. I mean, I was kind of like pleasantly shocked that, as Jason mentioned earlier, that they kind of went, the route, and getting Justin Fields and getting a potential franchise quarterback. Look, I don't know. I think this is what this was more for, and I said this on like a post draft thing that we did with Kyle Means, of course, Ryan Bukovetsky. It'll be interesting to see. Like, I think they're going to try and go for it this year. I think in the NFC North, because with the Rodgers' future in question, you don't know what Minnesota's going to do. You don't Detroit they're rebuilding. So I know some people are saying that maybe having Fields there, we'll see what they do. The Bears do the rest of the draft, but the thinking is that they're going to try and go for the division. What do you think?
Here's a couple things that popped into my head that I had to calm down for all my Justin Fields excitement. As soon as I came home last night, I saw the news on my phone. I forgot the actor's name from that movie, It's a Wonderful Life. I wanted to run down the streets and said, the Bears actually did it. Woohoo! It's a wonderful life. It's not a prank. It actually happened. Oh my God! Woo! But at that, calm down. The left side of my brain came in. For those of you who don't know, I know we have new lists, especially with Jason Leisure, his followers watching this program today and listening to it. The right side of my brain is the emotional side of my brain. The left side is my intelligence part. The intelligence part came into play, and a couple things came to mind. If let me say this again, if there's going to be a quarterback battle in training camp once it opens in July in Hallis Hall, do you trust head coach Matt Nagy to properly evaluate that process? One, because there will be 3 preseason games this year because you have 17 regular season games this year instead of 16. Number 2, we talked about it with Jason. you saw what Matt Nagy did last year. He couldn't wait to get Nick Foles in there. You saw what happened. It blew up in their face. If it wasn't for the defense, the Bears would have been 5-11 instead of 8-8 with a playoff berth. With those two things being said, Lakeem, do you trust your head coach Matt Nagy? I don't want to ruin anybody's celebration of Mr. Fields, but I want to keep this in mind, Bears fans. Put it in the back of your mind, and then be prepared when training camp opens in late July. And this is going to be one of many headlines. For people to say it's not going to be, you kidding yourself. You don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Do you trust head coach Matt Nagy if there's a quarterback? Not controversy, but if there's a quarterback battle, do you really trust Matt Nagy to properly evaluate the process? I don't.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see what direction they go with this because, yeah, you can kind of see why, yes, if Fields does outperform Dalton, in training camp, he could probably get the start. But again, Dalton, you gave him $10 million, so you're not just going to have him sit there all the time. But people are already betting on when he'll get the starts. Fields we'll see. But I think it's a lot of. I think we got to kind of have to wait and see. We don't know if training camp hasn't started yet, and we just don't know. And it'll be interesting to see how they do here.
Yeah.
What are you expecting the rest of the draft? Because there's still a lot of big names that are still out there as we go into the draft. I think by the time this releases on Saturday, for our audio people, it'll be day 3 with everything else that's been happening. So what names are you still kind of on the lookout for?
I'm just paying attention for the Bears. I know there's a lot of offensive tackles out there that are left. Hopefully the Bears could get 1 or 2 because they need depth there. And I want them to get a pass rusher. I think they'll achieve those things once this draft wraps up this weekend. So I'm looking for the Bears to draft a left tackle in particular because I assume, and most of you people that are listening and watching us are smart fans as well, the majority of you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Andy Dalton, I'm putting my money on him being the starter in week 1. And as I said in the last episode, Lakeena, last time I checked, Andy Dalton is not a mobile quarterback. He hasn't been. He'll never will be, especially given his age. Okay, So you need to draft a left tackle. And I know the offensive linemen that were injured for the Bears last year, they're coming back. But as Jason Leisha said when he was here the last time in January, you don't know how the offensive line is going to perform. Yeah, they did well last year with the injured pieces that were out. But with all those guys coming back, do you think the same thing is going to happen again? You just cannot predict. And so for the Bears, you take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers playbook. You build an offensive line like a brick wall, okay? And that's what happened with the Buccaneers last year because Tom Brady's 43, soon to be 44 years old at the start of this upcoming season, okay? You need to protect both quarterbacks, but Andy Dalton, assuming he's your starter, which I think he will be in week 1, you got to protect them as much as possible because he's not a mobile quarterback. And given the way the defenses work in today's NFL, he's going to get killed. If you're the Bears, you cannot afford that. And before we head to break, Lakeena, I was going to bring up my second point, which is Ryan Pace with the Justin Fields pick. It gives him a little leeway, but along with head coach Matt Nagy in particular, you still got to work like your job's on the line.
Oh yeah,
the hot seat is still hot.
Oh
I know everybody in Bears Nation is feeling good about the pick, and rightfully so. But both those guys, Pace and Nagy, your butts is still on the line. You still have to win.
And I think that's going to be the $1 million question is if, yes, you got Justin Fields, but now can you win with him? Is he going to be the guy for this season? And we'll see. I mean, look, Tevin Jenkins is a tackle that's sought after that surprisingly is still on the board. So we'll see if he, maybe we'll see if the Bears maybe can get him. Asante Samuel Jr., I know they're going to need secondary help too. So you wonder maybe the Bears.
I watched his daddy play for the Patriots.
Oh yeah, I know, right?
We're telling our ages, Lakeena.
I know. Look. When I saw when I saw Javon Horn get drafted by Carolina, I was like, oh Lord, Joe Horn's got a kid in the NFL.
Hey,
now.
Patrick Surtain, his son got drafted on Thursday. I'm like, man, I'm getting old.
Oh God, it makes
you won't hear me say that too much on this podcast.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Time flies, Jesus. But look, you still got a lot of names out there too. So we'll see. I mean, look, there are a lot of names out there. I think look, we'll talk about it on Monday. You know, we won't have grades or anything like that, but we'll talk about like how the teams, especially the Bears, how the rest of their draft plays out. But should be a lot of fun. I mean, look, I thought the first round was great, although Kadarius Tony's I'm assuming that was his mother that was wearing that weird like I don't know what that was, that pink, the zipper in the front. I don't know what that was. You know, he got drafted by the Giants. You know, a great wide receiver from Florida. That kind of threw me off a little bit for the rest of the night. I'm still like I had nightmares about that last night, but I just kind of threw me off there. But look, everybody there was no anything weird, or there were no like dogs in the draft room. Or although when Sewell got drafted by the Lions, the way their brass was celebrating, you think they just got Aaron Rodgers. It was great. But I mean, look, he opted out after the first game. He is actually a great tackle from Oregon. But look, you need somebody to protect Goff's blindside because he's going to need it. But I thought that was pretty good, nice moment. But look, seeing all the moments and the stories of some of these players, that's what the draft is all about. So.
Well, at least Lions head coach Dan Campbell will be buying his kneecaps off just yet.
Oh no, he might sit on him too. So, but he might sit on him too. Look, Devontae Smith ends up going to Philly. I think Hurts will.
That's a great pick, and also Miami's pick with Jalen Waddle.
Yes.
To Miami. That could be a great pick as well. So I love those two picks. I'm glad you brought those up.
One of the Baltimore's picks, Rashad Bateman from Minnesota. Look, Lamar definitely needs some weapons to throw to, so I think that's that always helps. You never have too many of those. ATN ends up reuniting with Trevor Lawrence, in Jacksonville. So look, a lot of great stories, and we'll probably have more when we reconvene on Monday and talk more draft.
Yeah, the first round was a little bit better than what people expected. I thought it was going to be a little bit of a shakeup, but it didn't turn out that way. Maybe the later rounds we'll see those. We'll see, like you said, we'll review all the surprises and non-surprises in our next episode. So the draft was the first round was very interesting on Thursday. It should be more interesting as they wrap it up this weekend in Cleveland.
Well, one question before we go to break. Were you surprised that Trey Lance ended up going to San Fran?
A little, but it came down to him and Mac Jones, and I know head coach Kyle Shanahan for the 49ers. I read somewhere Thursday, he was the only person that knew and all that. As we tell you on this program, around this time is lion season, so so anybody could throw anything out there to maneuver themselves or not have the other teams look at their potential guys. So after the calm of the storm that's passed away, I wasn't too surprised. Like, okay, but after the emotions settled down, I'm not shocked at all. But as we said the last couple of episodes, we'll say it again. Jimmy G, i.e. Jimmy Garoppolo, you're on the clock, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Sid, I'm ready. Are you ready to take this 20-second timeout?
Yes.
So we can kind of take a stretch and look, of course.
Yes, I need to refuel, refresh, because we got a lot to talk about in this next segment. The White Sox get back on track. The Cubs in Atlanta, you need to get the heck out of there fast. But I think there's just more problems than the Atlanta Braves. I'm just saying. Mm-hmm. And we got to talk about a couple other cities are potentially moving to full capacity in stadiums in terms of baseball. And we got to get to the best and worst of the NBA from this past week and give you some of the key games from this upcoming weekend to pay attention to. All that and more is straight ahead. Along with Lakeena McGee, I am Sydney Brown. You're listening to the weekend edition of Second City Sports. We'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to the second half of the weekend edition of Second City Sports Zoom Style.
Zoom Style.
Along with Lakeena McGee, which is she. I am Sydney Brown. That's right, haters. That's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can catch this podcast, Second City Sports, right here on YouTube at WARR Media every Monday and Friday. Once again, you can catch Second City Sports with a sneak peek on the visual every Monday and Friday right here on YouTube at WARR Media. Once again, at WARR Media. You can catch the audio version of this program still on the same schedule every Tuesday and Saturday. That's at WARR on Anchor. Once again, every Tuesday and Saturday at WARR on Anchor, which kicks you over to Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and that iHeartRadio app. We're available on all podcast platforms. Make sure you type in that search engine box to find us, WARR on Anchor. And you can go to our website, weareregalradio.com for more details. That's WEAREREGAL radio.com. And you can follow us on all social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at WARR Media. Once again, at WARR Media. That's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you very much in advance for your support as we spring on to the month of May.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends, folks.
Yes, and since we are broadcasting from right here in Chicago, Lakeena, let's tell everybody the good news, at least on one side of town, and that's the Chicago White Sox. The Southsiders got back on track by winning the day-night doubleheader over the Detroit Tigers on Thursday by the score of 3-1 in the first game, 11-0 in the second game after a piss poor effort, excuse my French, for the kids that's listening, after a terrible effort on Tuesday where the Tigers committed 5 errors. You only scratched out 2 runs. After that 4-game winning streak was snapped, but they came back on Thursday to sweep the doubleheader of cheating ass A.J. Hinch and the Detroit Tigers. You're getting ready to face the Cleveland Indians for 3 games at home this weekend on the south side of Lakeena. My quick takeaways from that series against the Tigers: Dylan Cease looked great in that 7-inning shortened doubleheader game with a career-high 9 strikeouts. It was his first career shutout. The first game, Carlos Rodon pitched his you-know-what off. Obviously, it wasn't a no-hitter, but he kept the Tigers lineup at bay. As I said before, Lakeena, Yohan Moncada is coming around. We've been telling y'all for the last couple of weeks. Don't worry about him. He's going to be okay. He hit another home run on Thursday in Game 2 of that doubleheader. And the Yamaneta, Yermin Mercedes, he's still the one of the hottest stories, if not the hottest surprise in baseball. He keeps doing it. If the All-Star game was held next week, he'll be a starting DH. I know the DH is not the rule this year because it's in a National League ballpark in Colorado this year, but Yermin Mercedes will be one of the top 4 getters right now for the All-Star game.
Yeah, I really like that performance by him, and also too by the White Sox. They needed that.
That ball is still going.
Yeah, also, I think they still haven't found that ball yet. I think it's out in Aurora, I think. But this was
downtown.
This was a series that they really needed. I mean, they lost that opener, but then they were able to come back and sweep that day-night doubleheader. And look, Cease looked really good. I mean, there have been a lot of White Sox fans that have been very hesitant on Cease. I mean, because there have been some games where he showed his great stuff, like you just saw a couple of nights ago. But then there have been some nights where he's been just terrible. And I'm glad we got the good Dylan Cease, but let's hope that he can keep it up the rest of the season. And look, Luis Garcia looked really good in that second game of that doubleheader. Where the Sox,
yes, it's Larry, not Larry.
Larry,
it's
yes,
not Larry.
Yeah, I don't know where people always think that his name's Larry, but he keeps saying it's Larry, folks. Come on now. He's been telling you that for years. But I mean, that was a nice performance by him. And look, I mean, Luis Robert, had a really good series. Even though he struck out twice in that second doubleheader. But look, I think that this is what you want at this point. Look, the White Sox are 14-10. They're in second place in the AL Central. This is where you want to be. You probably thought that maybe it'd be a little bit better record-wise, but look, I think this is probably the best case scenario for the White Sox, right now. And I think, look, I know that people are going to be, going crazy over what happened in that first game against the Tigers, where we can kind of tell that maybe La Russa should have pulled some guys. Everyone was blaming La Russa. It's going to be for the rest of the season. The wins. People are like, yay, good for Yerminator and Garcia and Tim Anderson. But yet when someone loses, I guess it's La Russa's fault then whenever they lose. So but I'm hoping that that's not the case the rest of the season. But look, I think, like I said, you're 14-10. You're right there where you want to be. Look, would you rather be in first place? Well, at KC, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but KC's looking really good. So at this point, but this is exactly where you should be and where you want to be if you're a White Sox fan.
Things are coming around for the White Sox, as we mentioned, Lakeena. They got off to that slow start to start the first month of the season as we're entering the month of May now. You're getting a couple of guys back. Luis Robert, he had flu-like symptoms the other day. Thank goodness it's nothing serious, so he should be okay.
Non-COVID, so yeah.
Lance Lynn is going to start tonight's game, as you can see this afternoon, I should say, on FS1 in Game 2 of that series against Cleveland. Lance Lynn is coming back. And, of course, Giolito will pitch on Sunday. He didn't have the world's greatest outing on Tuesday, the game that you were referring to. I thought Lou should have pulled him an inning before, but Giolito needs to get back on track, and I think he will be fine. But that offense, as I mentioned, it showed up against a bad young Tigers team. As we mentioned, Cleveland is going to be competitive, so you need to show up in that series because the schedule does not get any easier for the White Sox. I know you after this you have to go on the road to Kansas City, and then you'll still have to go on the road to Minnesota. So it doesn't get any easier. Looking, and we talked about it a couple of episodes ago. I expected this team to be a few games over 500 by the time they hit this road trip coming up to start the month of May. After the weekend games against Kansas City, you go to Cincinnati for 2. You have an off day on Monday, and then you go to Cincinnati for 2 for Tuesday and Wednesday. And then next weekend you go to Kansas City for 3, and then to Minnesota for 3. Then you come back home to host Minnesota for 3 and Kansas City for 3.
Yep.
And then you go back out to Minnesota for 3 more games on Monday, May the 17th. So we're going to find out a lot about this White Sox team after this weekend series against the Indians. You're going to face your toughest foes in the division. As you mentioned, Kansas City is playing very good so far. I know they had a little hiccup on Thursday at Pittsburgh, but Kansas City is playing out of their minds right now. Detroit, like I said, is a young team trying to have an identity within themselves. Cleveland, as we mentioned, they're competitive. I don't know if they're going to hold on. I doubt it, but this is where the White Sox are, and they can only get better from here. We said this last year, Lakeena. They with that shortened 60-game season, the White Sox beat up on the sisters of the poor to get into the playoffs. You shouldn't apologize for it, but that's what happened due to regionalized schedule. This year, there's no more excuses. You're the better team in the division. I know Kansas City is good, but you have to beat the teams in your division on a consistent basis to go where you need to go.
And it's not going to be easy. And I think that Sox fans need to realize that. It turns out this going to be a very competitive division, AL Central. So you're gonna be getting your best from Cleveland and Kansas City and Minnesota. Minnesota's starting to kind of.
You tell people Kansas City, they're not going to be division winners, but they could be
they're going to be a pains in people's side.
And I still expect that this year.
Yeah, I mean they're going to be pains in people's side, no doubt. I know as is reporting, Minnesota's 8-15, but I don't think they're going to be that bad the rest of the season. I think they are going to start trying to find their groove a little bit. So, look, I think if you're the White Sox, you're in a pretty good spot right now. The one thing you got to do is just win those games against your division. That was that was sort of your bread and butter last year. So if you can do that, then you should be feeling pretty good. As we get into the month of May, because you've got a pretty tough schedule, as Sid just mentioned. So. You need to make sure, you see this stuff, the pitching and the hitting and the defense is going to be right there be right there with you on a consistent basis.
You listen to the weekend edition of Second City Sports along with Lakeena McGee, which is she. I am Cindy Brown, which is me, as we talk about our Chicago baseball teams. Lakeena, let's go over to the north side. If you think things couldn't get any worse for the North Siders, i.e. the Chicago Cubs, it's gotten a whole lot worse. They are losers of 3 of their last 4 games to the Atlanta Braves. They salvaged the rubber match on Thursday. Lakeena, as I said before the start of the season, I said it in the last couple of episodes, I accept the fact that what this team is an offensively challenged team. You had to depend on great starting pitching. Your middle relief and your bullpen has been shaky at best. We haven't even talked about Craig Kimbrell yet. He hasn't gotten that much opportunities for the last couple of weeks because your bullpen, your middle relief, he's blowing games.
Yeah.
And your offense cannot hit with runners in scoring position consistently. And the Atlanta Braves, even though they've been struggling all year, they finally started to turn around. They got fat and happy on the Chicago Cubs, and that's what good teams do. And that's what the Braves did this past week.
Yeah, I want to see more of this, with this Braves team, let's say. We'll talk about them in a little bit. But as far as the Cubs are concerned, I mean, unfortunately, Kimball's probably the only person you can't blame for this because, like you said, he hasn't had any opportunities because the middle relief has been bad. The offense a lot of times doesn't show up. They were shut out two of those 3 games against Atlanta, and it's just unacceptable right now. The only mulligan, I guess you could say, if you're a Cubs fan, is if the rest of the division is no one's pulling away from that division just yet. So that's probably the one thing that you can probably say that, okay, maybe this is salvageable. I don't know, but they got Cincy this weekend. On Monday, they got the Dodgers. They host the Dodgers, so we'll see where the Dodgers are. I'm sure Doc Pierce is probably going to want to show up against his former team. They get Pittsburgh, then you got 2 against Cleveland, 3 against Detroit, and 4 against as you host Washington, you host the Nationals. They've been kind of up.
Kyle Schwarber is back.
Yeah, that'll be interesting there too. So, I mean, look, you have a kind of a chance to sort of like maybe get back to 500, sort of be kind of like right there in the division. Like I said, I don't think anybody's going to pull away from that division just yet, which is, if you're a Cubs fan, it's probably a good thing. I mean, the Brewers, they've been kind of up and down. You don't know what's Cardinals team you're going to get. The Pirates have kind of, sort of leveled off, which was expected. And Cincy, you're kind of like in the same boat with Cincy. So I'm not like, I have nothing else to say. I mean, hey, at least Rizzo can brag that, look, he struck out Freddie Freeman. That's probably like the one sort of, good thing, to come out of the series.
Yeah, who looked better as a position player, as a pitcher, the Yerminator or Anthony Rizzo?
Well, I think I heard some of the Anthony Rizzo did kind of pitch for a little bit when he first started playing baseball. So, but I think Mercedes just looked good pitching, so he could probably be that middle relief in case the middle relief stinks for the White Sox. But I always find it funny whenever position players pitch. It kind of keeps the games entertaining, even though yes, it's probably a blowout when that situation happens. But I find it amusing. I know people don't like. I know a lot of folks were not fans of Rizzo struck out Freddie Freeman, or Frederick Freeman, but I thought it was funny. I thought it was fun. You can have a little fun, baseball. Look, this is what gets you buzz. Come on, baseball, lighten up.
Yeah, it's a long season. Speaking of the rest of the NL Central, Lakeena, I did watch a couple of those games of the Miami Marlins, I should say, series. Of course, the Marlins took it to them for those couple of games, and of course on Thursday night, as the Brewers start a 4-game weekend series against the world champion Dodgers. Of course, as you mentioned, the Dodgers will be coming to Chicago starting on Monday night. The Dodgers had a chance to steal that first game in Milwaukee. Milwaukee held off the Dodgers 2-1. Josh Hader looks good as a closer right now. Trevor Bauer on the flip side for the Dodgers, he kept the Dodgers in it, but outside of that performance, the Dodgers have been having problems scoring runs. We'll get to more in a minute. But the Brewers, they've been starting hot to start off the year. As I said, they had a hiccup against the Miami Marlins. They won the first game against the Dodgers in their 4-game weekend series. The Cardinals, I watched a couple of games in that series against the Philadelphia Phillies. I know they won the rubber match on Thursday. Good luck to Bryce Harper. He got hit in the face with a baseball on Wednesday night. Thank goodness no broken bones to my knowledge. It looked very ugly, even on the replay. Ooh. That's the risk that you take playing baseball, but it looks like he's going to be okay. So, but like you mentioned, the Cardinals up and down. As I said before, the offense for them is not going to be a problem. It's their starting pitching, and which concerns me. Like I said, Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh. Cincinnati, they took 3 out of 4 in Los Angeles. No one saw that coming. I sure as hell didn't.
Oh, no, not at all. I think that's probably –
and I watched the majority of those games in that series.
Yeah, so that's sort of like – I think that caught a lot of folks off guard, the fact that the Reds were able to take 3 out of 4. I know. I think Dodgers fans are kind of like starting to freak out a little bit because now the Giants, they've looked good, thanks to Buster Posey and, Evan Longoria. Remember him, folks. But look, I don't think the Giants are going to be up there as – look, we saw this last year or maybe a couple years back with the Diamondbacks. They were right there with the Dodgers. I think they were in first place for about a day or two at one point, but Dodgers got hot. The D-bats got cold, and the rest was history there. So I'm thinking that's probably the same thing that's going to happen with the Giants. I think if anything, they might want to wipe the slate clean and start over. But and also guys like Pose and Longoria will probably be on the trading block at some point. But again, still very early on. We're about a month in, so we'll see what happens with that. Although the Giants actually have looked really impressive. I'm thinking the Dodgers will probably. I'm sure they'll get back on track. I think they're just too good. There's too much talent on that team. The NL East is just weird. There's like every team in that division is like only one game. One game is separating the five of them. There's a 3-way tie as of this recording between the Phillies, the Braves, and the Mets. Even like I said, no one's pulling away from that division either. So, that's you gotta think that we'll see by this time next month how that division's gonna look. The AL West, I mean, the A's kind of have heat things up. They've won I think 11 in a row. They've won I think like 12 of their last 15 or 16 or something like that. Although the Mariners are still hanging on. So are the Angels. Houston's kind of been sort of up and down lately. So no one's really pulling away from that division. And in the East, look, Toronto, they've kind of beat each other up at this point. The Red Sox, they're not that. I don't think the Red Sox are going to level off. The Rays, the Blue Jays, the Yankees are still struggling. Baltimore's falling back to earth. So I'm not freaking out over these standings just yet. If you're fans of any of these teams, you're fans of the Rays or the Giants, especially the Yankees, you shouldn't really freak out just yet.
I'll say this before we move on, Lakeena. I did watch both games of that quick 2-game series between the Mets and the Red Sox. If you're the Mets, of course, they struggled to score runs. I think they scored a total of 2 or 3 runs in their entire series.
Yep.
If you're Jacob DeGrom, who's their star pitcher for the Mets, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. He has a Jose Quintana, early Cressell White Sox disease. What I mean by that is you pitch your you-know-what off, but you barely get any run support. Jacob DeGrom should have a hairline like mine. None. Because your teammates won't give you any runs. If I'm him, I'm like, I'm doing all this, you won't back me up? What the hell?
I'm sure it's frustrating for him. I feel really bad for him at this point because I don't know what else. Look, he finished the month with 59 strikeouts and a .51 ERA. I mean, that's like the 279th instance since earned runs became official that a pitcher had at least 55 strikeouts and below 1 ERA. Come on, you guys are wasting him over there in New York. Come on, Metropolitans. Exactly. Come on, you guys are wasting him. Look, I don't blame him for being frustrated because it seems like he's kind of keeping you guys afloat. And luckily, like I said, for y'all, the NL East, no one's pulling away from that division yet. So it's still pretty much up for grabs. So you can look, you got some time to write the check, Mets. You better get it together, or else I'm sure DeGrom's probably going to lose it.
Here's the series that are going on from the world of baseball for this weekend. The St. Louis at Pittsburgh. You have the Tigers at the Yankees, the Marlins at the Nationals, those terrible New York Mets at the Phillies, of course, Cubs and Reds, the Astros at Tampa Bay, Atlanta at Toronto, i.e. in Florida. Boston, the Red Sox will play in Texas to continue that 4-game weekend series for Globe Life Field. Of course, you have the Indians and the White Sox here in Chicago. Kansas City at Minnesota. I'll be watching those games this weekend. And if you're a White Sox fan, you'll definitely be interested in that. Of course, the Dodgers and Brewers. Baltimore and Oakland, because Oakland's looking for revenge for Baltimore ending their 12-game winning streak last Sunday afternoon. And then Colorado at Arizona resuming their 4-game series this weekend. Anaheim's at Seattle, and then, of course, San Francisco at San Diego. Let's see if San Diego will keep up their momentum after beating the Dodgers last weekend in Southern California.
Should be a lot of fun out there in that NL West division. Very wild NL West. So,
yes.
Love that. So, you're listening to Second City's. What? No, go ahead, Sid. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead with the transition.
Oh, this is Second City Sports Zoom style along with Sydney Brown. I'm Lakeena McGee. And Sid, let's go to the hardwood, the NBA. I mean,
this should be too quick.
Oh my goodness.
This should be quick regarding one team in town. Obviously, there's one team in town playing basketball.
I'm looking at the Bulls. I think that Knicks game. I'm like, look, I'm telling folks that listen. I mean, we've seen this movie before. Look, I mean, Tibbs has done a really great job with the Knicks team. I'm not denying that. I'm not discounting that. But we've seen this movie before, and just with every team he's coached, You look good. You look good for for the first year, and everybody's knees fall off or someone's ankle is going to blow out. And look, it's only a matter of time. I'm not wishing that on any of those folks, especially Julius Randle, who's had serious knee injuries. But I'm just saying, just in case if something like that happens, you were warned. But look, I mean, the Bulls started off the week with a nice win, splitting that weekend series against the Heat. Look, they went. Look, Billy Donovan went big, and it worked for them. And look, the Heat went small, and they were able to kind of get the best of that. Could have won both of those games, but that's neither here nor there. The next game, I mean, I think there were a lot of factors in that. Not having Zach there, we'll get to Zach in a little bit. Not having Levine there, I think there was some homerism there. I mean, there were some calls. I mean, does Vooch have to lose a limb to get some calls here, folks? I mean, what the heck? I mean, it's just crazy. But I mean, look, I think that they've got the Bucks on Friday. We'll talk about that on Friday. We'll talk about that game, obviously. But they're kind of in a logjam. They're outside the playoffs right now. Some folks
they're behind the Wizards.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to them in a little bit, the Wizards, but. What's your mindset on the Bulls at this point? We're about maybe about 6, about 3 or 4, 2 or 3 weeks left in the regular season. What's your mindset with the Bulls right now?
Whether you make the playoffs or not, you got to finish strong. As we said before the season kicked off, this was a player evaluation year. New management with Mark Eversley, the GM, and Arturas Knisevich, the team president. They're evaluating players, and they're doing it as we speak. And this roster is going to look very different next year. Whoever's on the floor, you had to give it your all. You're on the clock. And so the question is, who's going to be here next year? Who's not going to be here next year? When the chips are down, which they are right now for Chicago, who's going to step in and show their true character? Okay.
Yeah,
so you're just like we say in all the other sports, Lakeena, especially in the NFL during the end of the year. Okay, you're not going to the playoffs. Everybody's hurt. Who can step up? Jobs on the line. So you have something to play for. Okay, it may not be your ultimate goal, okay, but you still have something to play for, your livelihood. And that's what this Bulls team is at right now.
Yeah, they're about as of this recording, they're about 2 games out of that last play-in spot with the Wizards, who apparently they've been playing better lately. I guess Russell Westbrook, everything that he's done, with the triple-double. I think he now has the most triple-doubles of any player in a month, already. So it's just crazy that what he's been able to do at his, almost 30. I didn't think the Bulls would be the top 3 or 4. I guess other folks thought they would be even after the trade. I know what this team. I know how this team looks. I know. Look, you got Vooch, you got Levine. Unfortunately, I hope they can keep Daniel Tice, because I think he's definitely one of those guys that can become a cult figure here in Chicago. Brown Jr. is another guy they can probably say that could probably be a good, extra piece for the Bulls. But Kobe White's been playing very well, sort of taking over for Zach in his absence. But other than that, Garrett Temple's look good. Thad Young's look good at times. Lowry, you just don't know which Lowry you're gonna get. Denzel, I know that's everyone's.
You should give him a ticket out of town.
But, him and Denzel too. I think that's probably those are probably 2 guys that
you put Denzel on that ticket out of town too, right?
Yeah, put
him on the Amtrak train.
Put on the Amtrak train. Yeah, exactly. So at this point, I know. I don't need to, I've been saying this for the last month. I don't need to know what Eversley and AK are doing. I don't. Look, if they want to, work in silence, that's fine. I'm okay with that.
Before we move on to the rest of the league, going back to Wednesday's game against the Knicks, and the Knicks pulled away in that fourth quarter. I know Derrick Rose, former Chicago Bull, is on the Knicks, and I thought he was going to have a big game. Did you know that Wednesday was the 9-year anniversary of his torn ACL against Philadelphia?
I heard about that, yeah.
That's why I thought he was going to have a big game. Maybe he was thinking of that. I don't know. But I remember real quick watching that game with my late mother, and I remember she was yelling out loud, "What the hell is he doing still out there on the floor?" If you guys don't remember, the Bulls were up about 12, 15 points with less than a minute to go. And then, of course, that's when Rose had the devastating injury, and that turned the fortunes around for their franchise. So this is kind of where they are right now. It's just interesting to see what a injury like that to a number one pick in your hometown
Yeah.
did. It shattered all the hopes and dreams for everyone. Uh, I'm glad that D Rose is still in the league. He's still doing great things with the Knicks, and which they'll become a playoff team. So we'll see him in playoff basketball. We won't see that from our hometown team here, but just looking back at that anniversary 9 years ago, this past Wednesday, a lot changed on that day
So
because
many.
that was supposed to be title number 7. That was probably the last time that the Bulls would have had a legitimate shot to get back at the Miami Heat.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen. Of course, the Heat went on to win the title that year and the next year over San Antonio with the LeBron James and company. So there's just a lot changed on that day. Not that Derrick Rose will have a big game on Wednesday. He didn't, but, well, we'll still get to watch him hopefully healthy in the playoffs with competing with the Knicks.
Should be interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
also, to that particular game, I kind of blacked that out of my mind, like you said, for bringing that up. But, I mean, yeah, I mean, a lot. Either was a franchise changing injury, and it's just unfortunate. I think that was probably their best shot to win another title for right now.
Mm-hmm.
But look, I'm glad D Rose is still in the league, playing
Mm-hmm.
very well, being productive, and look, the Bulls are starting to kind of get their ducks in a row. So look, hopefully the best for everyone.
Yep.
All right. So
what was the best or worst from you, or best or worst from you from the association this week?
oh boy, there were so many weird things. I mean, the Rockets being the Bucks. When I actually caught the tail end of that game after the Bears pick, and it was just weird. 143.
Shout out Kevin Porter, the youngest player to score 50 points and 10 dimes.
Points. Yeah, 50 points
Yeah.
for definitely a career high for him. And,
no Giannis on the floor. Let me go off.
yeah, I know, right? I mean, Giannis took that game off, and look, Houston took advantage, and look, they're tanking obviously, but I think look, a win like this can only help your confidence, and also too, John Wall is sitting for the rest of the season with a hammy, so I think this is sort of the kind of win that it helps your psyche if you're a Rockets fan. Of course, if you're the Bucks, you're sort of like you're wondering what the heck happened. Minnesota beating the Warriors. The Warriors had kind of been on a tear lately, and so is Steph. Steph had 37, but it wasn't enough. And some balanced scoring from Minnesota. We'll see what happens with Minnesota. There's so many rumors of what's going to be happening with the franchise. We'll see what happens with them. The Suns beating the Clippers.
That was my one. Yeah, congratulations to the Suns for the first time since 2010 clinching a playoff spot. Like I said, Chris Paul is a top 5 candidate for MVP. Monty Williams, he should be the number 1 leader in coach of the year, period.
Utah, needing 154 points to beat the Kings. I don't know. Look, everybody. I think just about everybody scored that play. Everybody there.
As Jason Goff, formula the 670 score now with NBC Sports Chicago. That's the NBA 80s on coke.
Pretty much. I mean, Clarkson, I think, had 23 off the bench. Oh no, that was he had 23 off the bench, so I think that look good for them for kind of holding down the fort while Mitchell's recovering from his knee injury. So hopefully he'll be back soon. The Lakers, I'm kind of like thankfully it looks like LeBron will be back on tomorrow. Tomorrow I just saw a tweet from Woj. He'll come back from that ankle injury because they need him. Because look, as great as AD's been, he's kind of like starting to kind of get him back into the swing of things. They need LeBron back. And they really do. I mean, they lost to the Wizards, and don't feel bad. The Wizards have been on a roll lately. AD had 26, but again, they need more balanced scoring. Some guys are not showing up for the Lakers.
Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I wasn't going to name names, Sid, but since you mentioned him, I mean, look, he only had 11. KCP only had 4 points in that game, and look, they need LeBron back. They need him back desperately. Hopefully, I'm sure it's going to take them a couple of games to kind of get back into it, but they really need LeBron back, and hopefully they can kind of like try to get off that, that play-in scenario. They're kind of like right on the edge of that, so hopefully they can kind of get back into it. So what about you, Sid? I saw the Suns being the Clippers from you, but what other games were you intrigued, or what else intrigued you this past week in the NBA?
As I mentioned, the Phoenix Suns clinching that playoff spot on Wednesday, and congratulations to them once again. Of course, going back to Tuesday's action quickly, the Thunder upsetting the Boston Celtics. I know the Celtics have been on the roll for the last couple of weeks. but they gave that game away on their home court. Portland's been on the road, winning their 2 games this week. They
They
beat
need those
Memphis
2
at home,
wins.
and they beat the Pacers on the road on Tuesday. So Portland, they're trying to avoid the play-in tournament, so they need those 2 wins, as you mentioned. Of course, the Brooklyn Nets, they beat the Pacers on Thursday on the road, and they beat the Raptors on Tuesday on the road. Kevin Durant starting to come into form as we head towards the end of the season, getting ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, some great performances by a lot of these guys, and we're kind of like into the, like you said, Sid, we're only about 3 weeks left in the regular season, so everyone's sort of like playing for position. There'll be some big games, starting today, on Saturday, also the first day of May. Some very interesting matchups. I mean, you got Chicago and Atlanta, I should say. That should be an interesting one. There down in Atlanta. That'll be a second of a back-to-back. We'll see what happens with that game prior to that against Milwaukee. The first game of ESPN doubleheader, which is sort of weird, but I kind of get it. Golden State and Houston. Houston coming off that big win, so hopefully maybe they can ruin some playoff dreams for some of these teams. Let's see. Washington, Dallas. That's suddenly becoming a very intriguing matchup. Washington trying to stay kind of in that play-in game.
That game should have been on ESPN. They could have swapped that Golden State Houston game.
Exactly. Toronto and Utah, another team that's trying to get into that play-in position. Also, the second half of that ESPN doubleheader, Denver and the Clippers. That should be a fun one.
And also, to a very underrated game at 7 o'clock tonight, you have New Orleans at Minnesota. The Pelicans still trying to hang around in there to qualify for that play-in tournament. Quietly, Zion Williamson is having a good year.
Perfect timing for him to have a great year. On Sunday, you got the ABC tomorrow, which is tomorrow. You got the ABC game of the week here. You got Brooklyn and Milwaukee. Maybe Eastern Conference Finals preview, perhaps, or semifinals preview, depending on how the seeding goes. That should be fun.
Yeah, let's see if Giannis Antetokounmpo plays, because he injured his ankle on Thursday against the Rockets. So, of course, he didn't play the rest of that game. Hopefully he's healthy enough to play. If not, it's going to be an ugly one to watch. But either way, it should be interesting. Of course, Brooklyn on the other side, they always have people out, so maybe it's an even match there.
Yeah, probably. It should be an interesting game and entertaining game nonetheless. The first game of that NBA TV doubleheader, you got Portland and Boston. Portland's been, playing very well lately. You got to think that confidence-wise, and also to avoid that play-in the Western Conference, they got to beat Boston. Boston's been, you don't know which Boston team you're going to get, so that should be a very interesting game, just in that sense.
Yes. Also at 7 o'clock on Sunday, you'll have Miami at Charlotte. That should be interesting. Hornets still hanging around to qualify for that play-in tournament. Miami has been on the roll. At the same time, you have Sacramento at Dallas. Of course, Sacramento beat Dallas in Dallas a couple of Sundays ago, so this will be a revenge game for Dallas. I know Luka missed the last game due to elbow soreness, I believe, so hopefully he'll be back by then. Of course, at the same time, you'll have the Knicks at the Rockets, Phoenix at Oklahoma City, Philadelphia at San Antonio, and then wrapping up the NBA TV doubleheader at 9 o'clock, you'll have Toronto at Los Angeles. You said that hopefully LeBron James will be back by then. Hopefully.
That's the word.
Okay.
That's the word that he'll be back for that game. So tomorrow night on NBA TV, check your cable or satellite provider, or watch it via whatever your device that you watch your games.
Yep. Let's head over to Monday's action. You'll have Indiana at Washington at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. ESPN at 6:30 will have Golden State at New Orleans. At 7 o'clock, you'll have Portland at Atlanta to take on the Hawks. Of course, you'll have the Chicago Bulls hosting the Philadelphia 76ers at the UC. That game will get ugly real fast. At the same time, you'll have the Knicks at the Memphis Grizzlies. At 9 o'clock, you'll have San Antonio at Utah. And then wrapping up that Monday night ESPN doubleheader, you'll have the Denver Nuggets at the Los Angeles Lakers.
Should be fun all around, and that is your NBA talk for this weekend. Okay, Sid, with the crowds and everything, that's sort of like the point of contention with some people. You got Los Angeles hoping they get back into full capacity by mid-June with all their venues and whatnot. New York, we were talking about before, the for the podcast. They're hoping to kind of get back in, in full by June. Chicago, I mean, like we mentioned earlier, they made the announcement that they want the Bulls and the Blackhawks, the UC, to be at 25% capacity, which for me, like I said before, I think slow and steady. You got to take it slow here, folks. I mean, you still got some cases going on in some parts of the country, especially here in Illinois. So I would say slow and steady, folks. We're almost there. Patience, kids, patience.
You know what? As I said before, we need to get back to normal as soon as possible. But like you said, we do have to be careful. But if you've been listening to this program or watching it, we told you that this is the way that it was going to go. Now, as you mentioned, Governor Cuomo of the state of New York, I believe by mid-May it goes from 20% to 33% for the Mets and the Yankees. So you should have more tickets available, more opportunities for fans to watch those games. In the state of Massachusetts, I know that the Red Sox had the smallest attendance in the major leagues with 10% capacity between 4,000 and 5,000 fans. And so I think they'll go up to 25%, I believe, by mid-May as well. So as you mentioned, Los Angeles, they want to be at full capacity between mid-June and July 1st. We'll see what happens there. Because remember, that was the hot spot toward the end of the year, in the beginning of this year. So it looks like things are starting to get back to normal slowly, but like you said, we still have a long way to go. Chicago, as you mentioned, the Blackhawks will have the last two regular season home games with fans at 25% capacity. The Bulls, the same thing. I know the Bulls' first game with fans will be Friday, May 7th against the Boston Celtics. That game happens to be on ESPN. I know tickets will go on sale for both the Bulls and the Blackhawks this coming Monday, May the 3rd. So go to your website information for more information on that, how to get tickets. I think as Major League Baseball did, I think season ticket holders would get first opportunity, and rightfully so.
Yeah,
and rightfully so. That's how that goes. Wherever tickets will be left over, it'll go on sale to the public.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what that.
Now with the city, and with the city of Chicago, you haven't heard. Some of these outdoor events are starting to be planned and take place. The Windy City Smokeout for our country music listeners. That's going to be held in July. But as of now, you're going to have to require a negative COVID test or a vaccination card as of right now. Hopefully that changes, but as of right now, that's the rules right now for that festival outside the United Center. Of course, Lollapalooza looks like it may be coming here for this summit. I don't think it's going to be the same, but at least you'll have some normalcy back with that. Hopefully, we won't have any weird smells downtown. As you know, Lakeena, we used to do our radio show down there from IMS, and you have any of these weird smells and all the other stuff, but that's a whole nother issue. You're starting to see things around the city starting to pop up. Navy Pier starting to reopen up slowly. So, and Wrigley Field is going to have concerts there this summer. I don't know if it's going to be at full capacity, but if you could get at least half capacity, that's just my guess, you'll be okay. And I had this thought, and I said it all along in this show, Lakeena. If the public's doing what we're supposed to do, and you still have, quote unquote, 8,000 to 10,000 people at Wrigley Field and at Sox Park, by the time midsummer hits, there's going to be a problem.
Oh, yeah.
But like I said before, once these other events start to get going, everything's okay. It's not a question of if, it's a matter of question of when, W-H-E-N, when you increase capacity at both these ballparks, since we're focusing on baseball, including our two teams here in Chicago. So especially the Sox, they need those crowds, especially the team is starting to get hot. They're starting to win. More people want to come. And so it's a matter of when Chicago Mayor, Miss Lori Lightfoot, start to increase capacity to let more fans into the ballpark, especially if it's less risk that you're going to catch this virus outside. You're outside, folks.
Well, and I understand that some folks would say that Chicago and Illinois have been more conservative about this, but no, I think they're playing it just right. Look, I don't want to be like Texas where they have everybody there, at full capacity right away, or Florida where the USC fight, last weekend you had like almost a full capacity. I'm not ready for those type of crowds just yet. I'd rather take it slow. I mean, look at the ticket that's going to be going on right now in a few hours. They're going to be at 50% capacity. I think they were only at about like 20, 25% last year when they
Mhm.
had to delay it and they had to, take place in November. So I think this is the best way to do it. And look, if you're a Kentucky Derby person, they're not going to do like the whole red carpet. I think they're limiting a lot of that stuff.
Mhm.
So, we'll see what happens here. You got essential equality, known agenda, and rock your world. Yes, those are horses' names, folks. Those are so for those of you who want to gamble in the Kentucky Derby, those are the three like favorites. So, you want to bet on one of those horses to win. Have at it. It's legal now. So.
Have you been talking to Eddie Olczyk?
Well, yeah, I know, right? I'm sure,
Because
they'll have.
Edzo said so.
Yeah, Enzo said so. So we'll see about the Kentucky Derby, but should be a lot of fun this weekend down there at Churchill Downs. But look, they're going to be at half capacity, so it's fine.
Mhm. And also, too, let's not forget what brought this up. I read this in the article in the Athletic. If you guys haven't subscribed to Athletic, please do so. It's worth your money is well spent on that publication. Please, we had a few people on from there on this program in the D and Davis show. Now that Davis show on this platform in the past, so please go support them. They had the article about the Atlanta Braves, of course, that beat the Cubs this week, 3 out of 4 games down there at Truist Field in suburban Atlanta. They're going to up to full capacity starting on May 7th.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, look, like I said, I'm not ready for that kind of capacity yet. Look, I'm sure a lot of those folks have been vaccinated or at least, have had their first shot. So that's fine. I'm okay with that. So, I mean, look, I think some states and cities are, playing it a little more like, okay, we got to get everybody back into it. No, I think I like how we've been doing it here in Chicago and Illinois. Look, I think slow and steady, wins the race. So, I mean, look, if people want to, go to the ballpark, want to go back to normal, fine. But I'm still gonna wear a mask. I don't trust some of y'all, so that's just me. But we'll see. We'll see how it is for the rest of the time.
I just want to hold our politicians accountable. I'm not trying to turn this into Meet the Press, but I want to hold our politicians accountable, whether you voted for them or not. If you said as a public we should be doing these things, okay, great. You do what you're supposed to do. Start playing around. Because if you not holding up your end of the bargain, there's going to be a problem. As I said before, Lakeena, I know this is bigger than me and bigger than us, but I'm ready to go back into Sox Park, and I will do that this year. If the capacity is not open after we're doing what we're supposed to do as a public, there's going to be a problem. I'm dead serious about that. I'm ready to go right now. That doesn't mean that I don't give a damn about my health. That doesn't mean that I'm reckless and not doing what I'm supposed to do. It doesn't mean all that. I don't want to hear none of that. I'm ready to go right now, open up capacity, let more people in. We need to get back to normal. It doesn't mean we don't care about our health. Things need to go back to normal. As I said before, and I'll say it here, it's not about the CV anymore. It's about economics. And what Jason Leisure said about the NFL, we said this on this show too. The NFL usually get what it wants. And it's going to have full capacity come the fall. And, with all that traffic, all the tailgating, all the merchandise, and all the money spent at that stadium, which the city of Chicago owns with the Park District, it all comes down to money. I don't care if we don't endorse this on this program, but I don't care if you're the drug dealer on the corner, the pharmacy, or any other business in this world. If you don't like money, there's going to be a problem. And don't tell me that your mayor and your governor don't like money, because if they say that, they're full of crap.
Oh, look, I think it's about economics, but like I said before, I think you want to kind of take it easy. And like you said, you're seeing, more festivals are going to be at the very least 50% or a third. And look, I much rather do it safely and reopen safely than just go full on. So look, I'm sticking to what I said. I think by mid-September, things are going to be at full capacity. But like Jason said, look, we're not, experts, we're not doctors, so we'll stick to the opinions of those folks, but this is just me and our opinion, and we don't endorse it, so we'll see what happens.
I'm just by saying this, and excuse my little rant, but I just had to get it out. It's just to all these people in charge, and that's why you say Lakeena starts for voting. I'm not trying to turn this to Meet the Press, but it starts with us. We're the politicians' bosses, not the other way around. Stop playing with our lives. We can do three things at once, ladies and gentlemen. We walk around with listen to our music and walking at the same time. We can chew gum and walk at the same time. Don't tell me we can't do 2, 3 damn things at once.
All right. And yeah, so like I said, so look.
I'm not mad at you, Lakeena. I just had to let you get it out.
Well, I mean, like I said before, look, if you're not going to get vaccinated, make sure you're putting on your mask, you wash your hands, and keep your distance, and look, do what you need to do. If you need to if you've been vaccinated, look, wait the 10, 14 days until you're fully, not immune, but you'll be protected from COVID, and just do it that way. Whatever you guys need to do, don't shame people who don't want to get the vaccine. I mean, like, people have had their reasons.
Thank you.
Outside of course, the conspiracy theorists, the anti-vaxxers aside, I'm not counting those folks, but there are, like we've been saying, there are folks who have legitimate concerns about the vaccine. So let's not shame people into doing it. But I think a lot of people are waiting for herd immunity, and hopefully we'll get there at some point.
Yeah.
So that we kind of get back to maybe that's probably a way for some people to get back to somewhat normal. We'll see. But like I said, just practice common sense. That's basically what I'm going to end it here with. Just practice common sense, folks.
Yes, the only person responsible for you is you.
Absolutely. And on that note, you can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sydney Brown, on the Twitter and the IG at SidK80. Once again, at SidK80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. Oh, good grief. I'm fired up today. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at SIDKID80. SIDKID80. There we go.
Okay.
And you can follow this podcast, Second City Sports, first right here on YouTube at WARR Media. Every Monday and Friday, once again at WARR Media every Monday and Friday for the visual version. The audio version is still the same as far as the scheduling is concerned. Every Tuesday and Saturday on WARR on Anchor. That's every Tuesday and Saturday at WARR on Anchor. That's WARR on Anchor, which keeps you over to Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and the iHeartRadio app. Go to our website, weareregalradio.com, for articles and more information. And you can follow us on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at WARR Media. Once again, at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
Happy Justin Fields Day. Yay!
Maybe a statue outside at Soldier Field probably in about a month.
I'm not saying Super Bowl just yet. You still got a long way to go.
A long way to go. So let's but encouraging nonetheless. So for Sid, I'm Lakeena. Like I've been saying, be careful out there, folks. To be good to each other. This has been Second City Sports Zoom style, and we'll see you next week.
Till next time, holla!